What's good, ladies and gents? Welcome to the MKO Pugilism Boxing channel where we talk all things boxing. Remember to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Make sure you put that notification bell on all so you can get notified as soon as the videos drop new content. So let's get into this one. So as of yesterday, I heard this news. Chris Eubank Jr. has signed a deal with Ben Shalom's boxer, and meaning that his fights will now be televised on Sky Sports. And Chris Eubank Jr., he's a guy that's been around. He's pretty much been and worked with pretty much all the promoters in the country. Mick Hennessy, first of all. He's done deals with Frank Warren. He's worked with Eddie Hearn. He was working with Wasserman, Calais and Nice, Sauerland as well. So he's a guy that's been around. Various stories about him have circulated, him and his dad being difficult to work with. And so now we find him at Ben Shalom's Boxer and Sky. And from what I've read about the deal, they've listed a number of names he's mentioned. The names he mentioned from the article I read on Sky was he mentioned that he's got big plans for the future to fight, over the next 12 to 24 months. So in the next 1 to 2 years, he mentioned the name of Terence Bud Crawford. He mentioned the name of Billy Joe Saunders. He mentioned Conor Benn's name. And he mentioned also Saul Canelo Alvarez, as that was like four names that he mentioned, and he said that was just off the top of his head. So we can see clearly that Chris Eubank Jr. by mentioning guys like Canelo, that's a great payday for him. Payday. I know that. That's a good payday for him. And although for my money, I think Canelo would give Chris Eubank Jr. a beating. I think he definitely beats Eubank Jr. Maybe stops him, just because of the gap in class and the skills of Canelo. I mean, Canelo, I would say, is sort of coming towards the tail end of his career. He's in the last stage of his career. But I think just it would just be that bit too good for Chris Eubank Jr. But I think at the same time, it's a good fight for Chris Eubank Jr. And if he can take it and give a good accounting of himself, show him, give Canelo a good fight, give Canelo a run for his money, then it's no disgrace. But it's one where I can't see him beating Canelo. But again, I think it's a great name to have in your resume, and it's one of those where I wouldn't say it's a you can't lose situation, but really and truly go in there as a big underdog, and if you lose, you lose. It's one of them. But it would probably be a big setback if he was to do that in the immediate future. But if he got presented with the opportunity, I'd say you take it with both hands. Terence Crawford, I don't know about that one because I think they share the same trainer. I think Brian McIntyre trains both Chris Eubank Jr. and Terence Crawford unless something's changed. So I can't really see that one happening. I mean, if that happened at 160 middleweight, I think as much as Chris Eubank Jr. is the bigger man, I think you'd have to back Terence Crawford just because Terence Crawford is a pound for pound fighter and he's arguably pound for pound number one in the world. And I think his skill and his attributes would just make up for the weight difference, and the difference in class would just be far too much. And I think he'd deal with Chris Eubank Jr. too. I think the realistic fights where I would favor Chris Eubank Jr. Would be against the likes of Conor Benn and the likes of Billy Joe Saunders. I think Billy Joe Saunders, he's been out of the ring for ages and ages. He really has piled on the pounds. So I think a clever fight to make probably would be a Billy Joe Saunders fight. Although in saying that, I don't know whether Billy Joe could make anywhere near like super middleweight or anything of that nature, just given how long he's been out of the ring and how I don't think he's really been living a life outside the ring. So to get him anywhere near sort of super middleweight or whatever would be difficult. So I again, that would that Saunders fight I think would be a smart one for Eubank, because I think very winnable. I think you'd have to back Chris Eubank Jr. to win that fight. I mean, it'd be 10 years after the initial one that they had. 10 years has really flown by. But I think that's a realistic one, that if Billy Joe could get anywhere near super middleweight, then I would say you back Chris Eubank Jr. to beat him at this stage, because we don't know what's left of him. Since getting beat up by Canelo, we really don't know what's left of him. He'd got an eye injury there and stuff. So yeah, I think that's one that Billy Joe Saunders would probably fancy the job, but I don't know whether he's got the discipline or the commitment to get out of bed and fight. But I'm sure if you ask Billy Joe Saunders, he'd probably say, "Yeah, I'm up for the job, and I'll school him again." He'd probably say, like he has in the past, he don't even need to train for Chris Eubank Jr. So I reckon Billy Joe would fancy the job, but I don't know. He may price himself out of it or whatever, but yeah, I think that one's it's a crazy one. I don't know how realistic it is to make because of the weight and because of Billy Joe Saunders, really. And then he mentioned Conor Benn, and I think Conor Benn, that's one of those things that I haven't really heard anything out of Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn's side, but I think that's one where if that's at 160, I suppose with Chris Eubank Jr. being sort of the bigger, stronger man, I think you'd have to back Chris Eubank Jr. You'd have to give Conor Benn a chance, but Conor Benn's not a 160-pound guy. He's a natural welterweight, and he's not the biggest of welterweights, and I think Eubank Jr. would probably be a bit too big, too strong for a guy like Conor Benn. I think Eubank would probably be favoured to win that, unless Eubank was somehow drained or unless they try to do that catch weight thing again. But I think at middleweight, you've got to back Eubank Jr., although he himself hasn't been that active. I mean, Conor Benn's been moderately active, but fighting very low-level opposition and not looking so great against that low-level opposition. And Chris Eubank Jr., I think his last fight was against Liam Smith, where, he looked excellent. So, that's what has been happening. Chris Eubank Jr. signs with Sky. Last thing I will say about this is that the deal seems to be some sort of partnership deal, so it doesn't seem to be like a straightforward thing where you sign as the boxer to the promoter and then the promoter sort of runs things. Chris Eubank Jr. detailed in the article that he's got power in this deal, and he's got the ability to run his career how he sees fit. So as much as he's signed with Boxer, he is kind of a partnership deal where he has a lot of say in what happens in who he fights. So that's just a few details there. A bit of breaking news. Chris Eubank Jr. signs with Boxer. And how this partnership goes is anybody's guess. For me, I'm on the fence. I don't know how it's going to go. I hope it does go good. And I hope he does take on some decent fights and entertain us again. He's one of those fighters that is very, very popular. Overall, I would say he hasn't really delivered on the hype and the talk that he's had around him. But he has proven that he's a decent level boxer. And that's something that can be said of him, that he is a decent boxer. He is a good fighter. He's never been quite elite, but he is a guy that will give anybody trouble. So let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section below. And until next time, it's MKO Pugilism over and out.